The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Can I introduce today's presenter, Launa Brooks from Launa Brooks Management Development. Today's Lunch and Learn webinar will give us some great hints and tips on getting the best out of your staff. Please take the opportunity during the webinar to post any questions using the question function on your panel. Thank you now, Launa, over to you.
Hi everybody. Apologies to start with. I'm full of cold today, but I hope that you can hear me anyway. And the good thing is, because you're not in the same room as me, you're not likely to catch a cold from this webinar. As Caroline said, my name's Launa Brooks. My company is Launa Brooks Management Development. I've been working with teams now for over 20 years, getting the best out of those teams so they can be more productive. And that for us in small business land means more productivity. It could well be that many of you out there never actually chose to want staff. It could well be that you started off with a great idea to run your own business, but then that business has grown, and as it's grown you've realised you just can't do it on your own. It could well be you've never managed staff before and you're not quite sure where to start, or it could well be that you've got some staff and some staffing issues, and that's why you're listening in today. So I'm going to talk about some of the experiences I've had and some of the ways I've tackled them, and hopefully that might be able to help you with your staffing issues and your staffing questions. And then at the end there'll be an opportunity for me to answer any questions that you have. So, where do you start? Well, I'm going to move away really from what I do and suggest the very, very most important thing you do is make sure that you're working with or have worked with an experienced HR professional. Because whatever you do with staff, it's really useful if you've got the documentation in place. At a bare minimum, we're talking about a contract of employment, a job description, and capability and discipline policies. Now, it could well be you're sat there thinking, well, I got away from corporates because of all that bureaucracy. And I understand that because I've been there too. But that bureaucracy exists for a reason, and that is because they're the basic tools of my management. And when you've got those right in place, then you know where to start. And they don't have to be onerous because they're your tools now, so they don't have to be company policy. They can be your brand and the way you want it in your style. Once you've got those in place, they're the basic tools you can refer to time and time again when you're working with your staff. So we're talking, again, just to remind you, a contract of employment, job description, so basically a list of what you want them to do, because how can you tell whether they're doing it or not if you've not got that list? And then if things do go awry, we've got a capability policy, so a list of things you can work through if that person's not capable of doing their job, and a discipline policy because they do things that really will put your brand and your company at risk. So you've employed someone, they're working for you. As they walk in the door, they're actually thinking of two different contracts. Yes, they've got your written contract, and it says that they start from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and they do that work as you've requested. But they also bring with them agendas and baggage. And that's actually where I come in, working on management development, because I deal with the agendas and I deal with the baggage. It's all called the emotional contract. So when they walk into your business, it's not just a written contract they're thinking about, they're also carrying with them the emotional contract. And that's an expectation of what they think they should get from the work, what they think they should get from the environment, what they think they should get from you as a manager, from their colleagues, from their peers, from your competitors. All that's carried in the emotional baggage of the emotional contract. And constantly, as they're working through their induction, they'll be challenging that emotional contract. Is this the right place to be working? And it could be quite something as simple as, do I really have to work 9 till 5? It says in my written contract I do, but on a Thursday, for instance, I might need to take the kids to school because my normal childminder isn't available. And that's not in the written contract, but it's a very emotional, important thing for that person, your new employee, because they want to look after their children. So it's that sort of thing that the emotional contract brings. Another example is tea and coffee. How often have we in the employment world had arguments over who washes the mugs, who makes the tea, who doesn't make the tea? So all the little things like that can bring some really big, difficult situations in the workplace if they're not nipped in the bud. So from the very beginning, we've got all that human resources idea, we've got all the paperwork, but we've also got to start tackling that emotional contract. What does the person expect from the workplace? Now going back to the old corporate world, it's very likely that you had supervisions or one-to-ones and appraisals and end-of-the-year appraisals and write-ups. And again, you're thinking, oh, here she goes, it's the corporate world. They're there for a reason, and that is you're getting to know the emotional contract. When you sit down with a member of your staff, they'll tell you, and you can ask them, have you got any issues with starting at 9 to 5? And they'll say, well, actually, Thursdays I might need to occasionally take my children to school. So you've got that, you can write it down, you've got that agreement. So the part of the emotional contract you're working with has been dealt with, and you can move on knowing that that's been put in place. It might well be that on Monday mornings, a new member of staff always turns up late. And weeks into the time, weeks into it, you're getting more and more annoyed because you don't understand why they're there on a Monday. And it could well be they've had a few beers over the weekend and can't face Monday mornings. And you're getting angry for probably a good reason. Or it could again be something else. Perhaps they're a carer, and then you need to make sure on that particular Monday someone's in the right place. But if you've not met with them regularly to find out what's behind these behaviours, you're getting angry, they're really not explaining themselves, and trust me, everybody else in the office will have noticed, and everyone else in the office will be annoyed that someone else is getting away with turning up late on a Monday morning, not knowing the reason behind it. So just imagine, you schedule in an hour of your time once a month, once every 6 weeks, to sit down with the people you directly manage. Sounds dreadful when you're trying to work for yourself and you've got so much going on. But if you take that time out, and trust me, quite often, physically going out of the business, even just down to the coffee shop down the road, can make really pay dividends because you're challenging the emotional contract. You're challenging all those things that could go wrong in the workplace. You're making sure that you're looking after your employee from a welfare point of view, and they will give back. They will appreciate that, and they will work harder when they come back into the workplace. So the hour you've taken out, you will get back in dividends. The difficult thing with staff, invariably, is some will need a lot of that. Some members of staff will need a lot of support and a lot of encouragement because they lack confidence or they lack faith in what they're doing. Others are the other extreme. You only need to speak to them once every 2 months, give them parameters, tell them where they can go, where you want their work to be, and off they go. And 2 months later you get together for your next cup of coffee and it's all done. T's crossed, I's dotted, and that's great. But it doesn't always happen like that. You just get to know your staff as people, and you'll find that you can work out how often that they need to be supported. And those who need to be supported more often than not will balance out your time and the time that you're having to commit to actually make sure they're getting what they need. So what about these issues in the workplace? Why do we get such issues in the workplace? Why do we have an emotional contract? Recently I watched The Mill. I don't know if you watched The Mill. It's a drama on television. And all taking it back to the Industrial Revolution, where we were all piled into a huge factory. We did as we were told for 16 hours and we went home. But we know now things have changed. It's not like that. People expect a lot more from the workplace. And especially if you're in a hard to recruit area, maybe IT for instance, where you're looking for specialist skills, you need to look after your staff. So when they come with this baggage, what I think is really important as they're coming into the workplace is you as the manager are a leader and you are actually leading the way forward and they're following you. And what I suggest you look to do is culture. Develop a culture that suits you and your brand. You already are from the day you first started when you agreed on the logo and the colours. But also part of that culture is how you want to manage, how you want staff to behave, and what you want them to do. The most important part of that, I would say, is a culture of adulthood. When your staff come into your business, when they're out there representing you, they are adults. Sounds easy, doesn't it? But are they adults when they're fighting over who should be washing the mugs? Are they adults when they're sulking because they don't realise the person's coming in late one day a week because of commitments? The important thing about a culture of adulthood is communication. We'll get there in a minute. Now I'm going to go back to day one when you're born, just to explain what goes on. When you're born, when you're a baby, there's only really two ways you can respond to anything going on in the environment. We all know these as fight and flight. So you have the opportunity. Okay, I can't do that. Hold on, a few technical things going on here.
Okay.
Brilliant. Hi. So when you're born, it's fight or flight. So something comes into your environment, you're not sure how to deal with it. So you'll fight it, you'll thump it, or you'll run away from it. So that's how you're born into this world. Then over the years, you should be socialised by your environment. So your mum, your dad, your peers, your siblings, your school, your education, socialise you into adulthood. And they teach you how to behave in an adult way. And that's the adult way you should be taking into the working environment. However, we don't always get it right, and you just have to look at history for that. Not everyone is socialised into adulthood. And we all do this, we all carry our fight and flight with us. And these are shown in passive and aggressive behaviours that we carry into the workplace. So you either flee from something, your flight is your passive behaviour, or you fight, which is your aggressive behaviour. And in the middle is the assertive behaviour of an adult. So as a manager, as a business owner, your responsibility is to create that adult culture, that assertive and confident culture in the workplace. And as your staff around you behave in a passive or an aggressive way, it needs to be dealt with. I'll give you an example. Many years ago I worked in the public sector and I'd only been in the post for a few days when someone decided to tell me about one of my managers and her behaviour. He told me that invariably she didn't get her own way, she walked out of the workplace, she literally just picked up her coat and left. And I said to him, well, that'll soon stop. And he just thought I was joking. Anyway, a few weeks later she did just that. She came out of a meeting and she'd been unsuccessful in her ideas, picked up her coat and went home. And the following day I picked up my discipline policy and disciplined her. And it went on her record that she'd left work in such an inappropriate and unprofessional way. In the 2 years I worked in our public sector organised, she never did it again. And that's why you need those tools, because it's not nice to have to use them, but you need them. And when people start being passive, when they start backing off, and they're not doing their job properly, and you might think they're not capable of their job, you've got your capability process to look at. But when they start misbehaving in the workplace, the worst of course being bullying, you've got your discipline coach to look at. And if you've been doing everything I suggested, meeting with them regularly, once every 4 to 6 weeks, making a few brief notes, you don't have to do all the complicated paperwork corporate make you, just making a few notes, you've got your evidence to start saying to that person, I'm sorry, we don't think you're capable of this job, or you've made a mistake, we're going to have to discipline you here. And you've made all those notes and you're able to use them. The difficulty is facing people, having the courage to face people. It's very, very difficult. One of the worst things I ever had to do was discipline someone who was severely disabled. Not because of his disability, obviously, but because he brought his bad moods to work. On a good day, he was great to work with. On the day when he was in a lot of pain, he made everyone else suffer with him. He wouldn't talk to people, he slammed doors behind him, he'd go marching through the office, so everybody knew he was having a bad day. And that had been going on for about 18 months when I started working there. And I had to discipline him for his moods. It was really difficult facing such a great guy and saying, look, this is not appropriate. He went on his record. 3 weeks after I disciplined him, he actually pulled me to one side and thanked me for disciplining him, which you might say is a little ironic. The truth of the matter was, no one had ever told him the impact he had on his colleagues. He had so much respect for his colleagues and vice versa. He was completely unaware of the damage he was doing to the working environment. It didn't stop him having bad days, and it didn't stop him coming to work when he was in pain, but he found ways of dealing with it that didn't impact as much on his colleagues. So they weren't walking around just crashing into those eggshells. And a year later, when I had spoke to him about it again, just to make sure everything was going well, we really did say how good it was that I'd made that difficult decision to speak to him about his behaviour. And it was managed well, and his colleagues appreciated it as well. So a lot of what I do for my business is to do with confidence, is to give you as a manager confidence to face that person across the desk and say this behaviour is inappropriate. Once you've done that, fingers crossed, that person moves on. Or you monitor it. You keep those notes going and you collect it together. And only a long way down the line might you then find the need to go to your discipline or capability when you do need to bring in HR. Because there's so much more you can do before then to get a good working environment. It's about setting boundaries. It's about really thinking about the culture you want for your working environment, living that culture, so you are actually leading the culture and getting your staff to follow you through. The last thing I wanted to mention today is about communication. I think every place I've ever worked, they've all said they want to have better communication. Always makes me smile. How many newsletters do you get via email? How many written newsletters do you get telling you what's going on in your organisation? But are you really communicating? And when you're looking at the human brain, we store information in different ways to each other. So everybody I'm talking to today will be filtering what I say, taking out of it what you need and storing that. And the rest will be forgotten. And that's fine, because that's how your brain works. So if I were to get you all into a room and ask you what I'd said, you'd actually all say different things because they were important to you. It's called filtering. And the way we filter depends on the way we were brought up again. What your parents thought were important, what your peers, what your social background, your environment, everything impacts upon the way you look at the world. It's your view of the world. And the way your view of the world works at work is that you store the stuff that's important to you. So imagine sending out an email that is really important. It will show your view of the world because you've written it. And everyone who reads it will interpret it in their own way. So have you really communicated with one single email? Have you really shared with your staff your vision of the future, your mission, whatever you wanted to communicate? To be fair, it's very unlikely. Whenever I work with staff, I always work face to face, because you can see on their faces whether they've really understood what you said. And the most important thing you can ever do is get feedback. because you'd be surprised at how different the feedback might be to what you actually wanted them to hear. So when you're thinking about communicating with your staff, just remember that what you say might not be what they hear. So you have to work as a team to ensure that you're all thinking the same things and you're all working towards the same goals in the right way. And that again is why these weekly, monthly, 2 monthly supervisions, whatever your staff needs, are so important. Because you could be halfway through a conversation with them, suddenly realise that they're actually not all working towards the same goal you are. And that's your money now, because it's your member of staff, it's your team. So that communication is vital. And when I say feedback, I mean get them to say, yes, this is what I'm going to do. This is what you expect of me. This is what I'm going to deliver. Whether it be what we call the hard targets, they're going to go out and they're going to get you 3 new clients, or whether it's the softer targets, it's all about the people and developing the team. Make sure that you're all singing from the same song sheet, and that communication is flowing. And as we know nowadays, we all get so many emails, there's nothing to say, and those emails are going to be answered anyway. They're going to be read. It's very difficult in a working environment to get that team balanced. But when it works really well. Yes, your staff are coming to work for money. We've all got mortgages, rents to pay, things to buy. But actually, motivation isn't just about money. A lot of things motivate people in the workplace. And a good working environment with people they get on with, when they're looked after, means that they will work harder, and that increases your profitability. And one thing to remember is, of course, their standards again will be different to yours because of that filtering. And that little bit of give and take, allowing them to come in late on a Monday, but explaining to the colleagues why it's happening, means that everybody knows what's happening. That particular member of staff feels reassured that you're okay with them coming in late on a Monday. You know that they're doing it, you know why they're doing it, and then business carries on as usual. So by giving a little bit, you get a lot back. And as I said, you nip things in the bud, you understand what motivates your team, you pull them together to work together towards those common goals that you've communicated in many, many different ways, setting the boundaries and leading from above. And that way, they all work together to achieve the goals that you want for your business. And don't forget, just because you're the boss, it was your original good idea, doesn't mean you're the only one with good ideas. When you get them motivated, when you get your staff driven, they will feed back to you some great ideas that you can adopt to develop your business and develop your profitability, because they'll work as part of your team because they want to. So, throwing a lot of ideas in there, a lot of thoughts about how you can work with your team. Just wondering if there's any questions. Have you seen any, Caroline? No. I just had an email about the slides. I do apologise, there has been a technical glitch on the slides, so we weren't able to use slides today. I just put up my website so people can see the sort of things I might be talking about. So if it has been distracting to anybody, I do apologise. It is the same one driving round and round, so I'm sure you've seen them so many times in half an hour. You can move on and look at other things. Any other questions coming up? I do have a few slides. So what Caroline and I said is that we should put them up on the website so that you'll be able to get access to those over the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Launa, that was great. So if there are any questions that you think of later on, then do drop me an email and I can forward them on to Launa at a later stage. Our next webinar, just for your information, is going to be on Monday the 23rd of October, and the presenter will be Les Gutteridge from 101 Computer Services, who is a Microsoft application training specialist. If you'd like to attend that webinar, then just drop me an email again. Thank you very much. It's caroline@biz-smart.co.uk. We'll be closing the session now, so thank you again, Launa, for that great webinar. Again, if there's any questions, please email me and I'll forward them straight on to Launa and she will get back to you direct. Thank you again, everyone.